Think about the last time you sighed after a meeting, replayed a conversation in your head, or told yourself, that was such a waste of time. It felt kind of small, harmless, even necessary. What if I told you that habit is quietly training your brain to drain your focus, your clarity, your energy, and your decision making, especially when you're under pressure? That's what today's episode is all about. Welcome to the NeuroLeadership Edge. I'm Claire Hayek. I'm a neuroleadership expert, TEDx speaker, and my work focuses on one thing: pressure breaks leadership and team performance. And I design the systems that prevent it. Simple. This show is about what actually happens in your brain when the stakes are high and how to stay clear, grounded, and effective when it matters most. In this episode, you'll learn how a very common habit reshapes your brain without you even noticing or realizing it. Why this habit feels relieving in the moment but costs you clarity over time, and how to interrupt the loop in real life without forcing positivity or suppressing emotion. Let me start by sharing something that most people recognize immediately, even if they have never stopped to think about it. Picture the end of a long meeting, one of those meetings where nothing explodes, nothing dramatic is happening, but you walk away feeling drained anyway. You close your laptop, you lean back in your chair, and without even thinking, you say something like, "That was a complete waste of my time." Or maybe you text someone, "I can't believe how that went." And maybe you roll your eyes or something like that. It really feels harmless. It even feels relieving in a way. You move on with your day, assuming you just got something off your chest and cleared a little bit of that mental space. But what most people never realize is that moments like that are not neutral. Your brain is listening. Your nervous system is taking notes. And over time, those small moments shape how you respond to pressure far more than big, dramatic decisions ever do. So that's why I want to talk about today. This episode is personal. It's about how you show up inside your own head, how you process frustration, how your brain learns from repetition, and how one very common habit slowly reshapes your mental operating system without asking you if that's what you really want. The habit is complaining. Now, not the exaggerated, loud version that everyone notices, nah, 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 and the nagging, right? I am talking about the everyday version, the sigh, the replay, the quick comment to yourself, the familiar story you tell about how things should have gone differently, how disappointed you are, frustrated you are. Most people think of this as, just let me vent, right? We're just venting. Some people even see it as something healthy, kind of relieving that pressure, when you talk about it. From a brain perspective, it works very differently. That's the thing. Your brain is designed to learn from experience, especially experiences that carry emotion. This is important. This is a little nuance that is important. So that learning process is called neuroplasticity. And it's the same mechanism that allows you to build skills, habits, and expertise over time. So the neurons that fire together repeatedly start to wire together and making certain patterns and neural pathways easier to access in the future. So when you complain, you're not just expressing frustration. You're actually rehearsing it. You're training it. You are teaching your brain where to focus, what matters to you, and what deserves attention. Systems involved in attention and threat detection in the brain become now more efficient at spotting obstacles, friction, and unfairness because that's what they're being asked to look for over and over again. Do you see how that works? So this explains something many high-performing people, high-performing leaders experience and struggle to put their finger on, struggle to name. They feel, tell me if this sounds familiar, so you, these leaders, these people, or maybe you may feel mentally tired faster than you used to. Your patience runs thinner, small disruptions feel bigger than they actually are, or that bigger than they should, right? Decision making takes more effort. A recovery after stress feels much, much slower. So nothing about you is really broken. It's just that your brain has simply become very good at doing what it has been trained to do. Here's an important piece that often gets missed. And I'm not going to deny this. Complaining feels really good at first, right? There's a short-term sense of release. You're feeling really like, it's so nice to vent this, to just say it out loud, right? There's that short-term sense of release, a feeling of validation, a moment where tension drops. It just drops just enough for the nervous system to register, woof, I'm relieved, I vented. So what happens, the brain logs that same relief as a reward because it feels good. And rewarded behaviors get repeated. So what you tell, basically what your brain records as a reward is going to repeat. So this is where the loop gets tighter. And so this is what's fascinating about this. So something frustrating happens. You talk about it, you feel a bit better, right? The brain remembers the sequence. And over time, frustration shows up sooner and relief fades faster, which leads to repeating the same habit more often. This is how a pattern becomes automatic. I mean, you're not even realizing this is happening. There's a whole other layer to this that matters, especially for capable and driven people. This habit quietly turns into self-sabotage, like a sabotage pattern. It's not because, your mindset, you have an issue with your mindset. It's just a simple learned pattern. When someone complains repeatedly, the nervous system is doing something very specific. It's expressing tension. It's placing the source of discomfort outside the self. So in the short term, that feels stabilizing. You're putting it out there. It lowers the pressure that you're feeling on the inside. And the brain registers that drop in tension as relief, right? And that relief feels good. Over time, again, the brain begins to associate emotional safety. Listen to this now. So the brain begins to associate emotional safety with the idea that control lives somewhere else. It lives with the situation, with other people, with circumstances. It lives outside of you. The complaint becomes a release valve. But when release isn't followed by reorientation, the brain learns to stop at that point, at the problem period. And over time, people still perform, still deliver, still lead, but something shifts internally, something changes. Creativity is taken away. It feels muted. Energy drops much faster, choice feels a bit harder, it feels kind of narrower. That's why this pattern is important. It doesn't stop you from functioning, it quietly shapes how you experience effort and influence. If frustration is followed by rumination, then this is what we're reinforcing in the brain. That loop actually becomes stronger. If frustration is followed by orientation toward action, towards getting out of it, then a different loop forms. This is where mental fitness lives. I talk often about mental fitness, these quick resets and how to reorient the pressure and bring it back into our clear-headed, focused, calm authority, our brain CEO, our prefrontal cortex. From a performance perspective, this is important more than most people realize. Being able to shift from to orient that negative feeling or complaining or frustration, to reorient it into an action. Therefore, a brain trained to rehearse frustration stays activated longer in frustration. The attention narrows, the energy gets pretty much consumed by focusing on what feels wrong, what's going wrong. Shifting into solution mode takes more effort because now we have to get out of that loop. When this happens over time, it begins to change how the brain is allocating the resources and the energy. So under ongoing stress, especially stress that carries emotional charge, the brain shifts activity away from the prefrontal cortex. Okay, especially when the stress and the pressure is carrying emotional charge. You're no longer in your prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex goes offline momentarily. This is the part, again, of the brain responsible for focus, emotional regulation, impulse control, decision-making. It's that part that helps you pause, zoom out, look at a situation, and choose to act a certain way, choose a response instead of a reaction. And chronic stress doesn't remove this capacity, but it makes access to it slower and more expensive. The brain starts prioritizing, for instance, speed and certainty over let's pause, reflect, right? This has actually been shown consistently in decades of neuroscience research on stress and brain plasticity. Studies actually led by researchers like Bruce McEwen have shown that prolonged stress exposure changes how the brain actually functions, in particular in regions responsible for executive control, the strategic side of the brain. So the brain becomes more reactive and less flexible, not because something is wrong, but because it's trying to conserve energy and protect you. So you can feel the shift in everyday life. You reread emails more times than you used to. You feel mentally tired sooner in the day. Decisions that once felt straightforward now require more effort. The issue is regulation. Complaining keeps the stress signal active. Each time you rehearse frustration out loud, the nervous system treats it as relevant information. And the brain stays alert, muscles stay subtly tense, and attention keeps staying narrow. Over time, this is basically training the brain to live in evaluation mode as opposed to orientation mode. Evaluation mode, here's an example, will ask, what's wrong here? Orientation mode asks, what matters next? What is the small action I can do that would really make the biggest impact in a positive way? So both are actually useful. Only one supports sustained performance and one doesn't. Research actually on attention bias shows that the brain becomes more efficient at detecting whatever it practices noticing. When you're being irritated and you're focusing on problems, when that is dominating what's happening in your head, they stand out more around you in the environment. You're able just to spot on problems and being irritated because you're focusing on that. This makes the world feel much heavier, actually. We don't really need this, right? This is not really serving us. It feels heavier. The world feels more demanding. Even when the demand and the pressure outside of you is still the same, but you're focusing on the problems, everything will seem heavier. Everything is exaggerated at this point because your brain is just focusing on it. This is why people often describe the feeling on edge without being able to point to a single cause. Like, why do I feel that way? Because you've been focusing on this pretty much all your life, and you've built those neural pathways that's saying focus on the frustration, focus on the irritation, as opposed to focus on how do I get out of it? Or what should I do next? What's really going to serve you right now? The brain is doing a great job. It's really doing what you're telling it to do. When you're able to shift into your prefrontal cortex, then everything gets easier. You're more in clear decision making. You're more focused, doing those little actions that's moving you forward. Then you feel stuck and drained and basically on edge. Those moments where you focus on frustration, they accumulate and they have a large effect over time, negative effect on your well-being, of course. So if you've ever noticed sometimes, people or maybe yourself saying, I don't know why everything feels harder lately, or I feel like I'm always on edge, or I can't seem to reset the way I used to and kind of snap out of it. It's no surprise because the brain is responding exactly as it was trained. And here's where this becomes empowering rather than discouraging. This is how we can get out of it. The brain learns through repetition, right? And that means it can learn new patterns just as well, just as effectively. The key is not to suppress it and push emotions down or anything like that, because that creates more tension. The key is to interrupt the pattern. High-performing brains allow the initial reaction to come in. I'm frustrated, I'm irritated. It just shows up. Then the irritation passes through. The emotion gets acknowledged. Okay, that's what I'm feeling. Then something different happens. Then we snap out of it. We're not rehearsing it over and over again. So instead of replaying the whole episode again, and I'm frustrated, I'm irritated, and ruminating over it, and what went wrong, then the attention gets redirected toward what really matters next, toward what can be changed. What can I control, actually, in a positive way? It gets redirected toward the decision that needs to be made in this present moment that's going to serve me the most. This shift changes the nervous system state. It signals safety to the brain. It literally cuts the recovery time in half, if not more. And it preserves that mental energy. You are not taking 2 days to reset. You see this in real life all the time. Think about, for instance, the difference between someone who finishes a tough meeting and just ruminates and spirals for the rest of the afternoon versus someone who takes a breath, stands up, and asks themselves, what's the next move that actually matters here? You see the difference between those two? The same meeting, same outcome from the meeting, but very different mental cost. This is why small habits practiced daily will shape how you perform under real daily pressure. If you are listening to this and realizing you do this more than you thought, that awareness is the leverage point right there. Awareness creates choice, and choice creates change. That self-awareness is huge. So here's a simple way to work with this, something you can use actually immediately without having to add another thing on your plate or to your schedule. The next time you catch yourself complaining, pause after the sentence, let the words just land, then ask yourself just one question. You can say it out loud or you can ask yourself silently. What am I training my brain to focus on right now? What am I training my brain to focus on right now? That question is going to just interrupt the loop. See what we did there? It brings you back into awareness. It shifts you from this automatic rehearsal and the self-rumination into orientation, taking action. And from there, you just can redirect it. Name one thing you can influence in the next 10 minutes, something you could do and influence in the next 10 minutes, one decision you can make, one action that's going to move you forward, as opposed to leaving you stuck in this self-rumination. Don't get me wrong. The goal is not to be perfect here. The goal is redirection, just direction. Over time, when you do this, it's going to build a different pattern. Your attention is going to widen. Recovery is going to improve. I promise it will. Energy is going to get better. Decisions will feel much clearer. And the thing is that you need to understand is that life will remain complex. Things are not simple in the day-to-day. Pressure is out there. It's real. But your brain becomes a better partner. It's working with you as opposed to working against you. It's actually not being an added source of stress and friction. It's actually working with you. And this is what mental fitness looks like in real practice. It's cumulative. So the more you practice it, you're building that muscle, that resilience, and that ability to be able to snap out of self-sabotage and draining your energy and snap back into your focus, your calm authority, your clear decisions, your skills, where your prefrontal cortex lives, basically your brain CEO. And here's what I want to leave you with. The habits you practice when things feel minor will shape how you respond when things feel heavy. So those little habits, even when little things, things are not like that big, but these will really help you build that mental fitness to deal with much more difficult situations. Your brain is always listening and your brain is always learning. It's always learning, and it's always trying to adapt to what you repeat. You just have to pay attention. So try to pay attention today. Notice what you're rehearsing. Notice what you're telling yourself. Notice what you are reinforcing. Because your future life and your future decisions will depend on it. So catch the complaining and reorient it. Now, if this episode landed for you, let today be an experiment. Nothing to fix here. We're not trying to fix you. We're not trying to force anything. We're just trying to notice. Because awareness practiced daily changes everything. And I want to leave you with this as well. If you're watching this video, you can see a QR code here. Please do scan it. There's a lot of resources that I share constantly. Also, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn and follow me on social media. If you're on the listening app, do check the description to connect. And just before I leave you, remember, lead boldly, stay human, and turn every challenge into a gift. See you all